Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/teacherrecharge. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Just go to audibletrial.com/teacherrecharge today. My name is Fred Kepp. I'm the host of the Teacher Recharge podcast, and here is a tip for the next time you're bored in a meeting. Look around the room and turn everyone in the room into the person that is infected in one of those scary movies. So turn them into a zombie in your mind. It is flipping funny. I would highly recommend it. Anyways, let's get on with the show. Hello everyone, happy Monday to you. It is getting closer and closer to Christmas. You can feel it in the air. The music is the same exact music every single day. But we have a present, an early Christmas present on the show today. Her name is Michelle Ferré. She's a 4th grade math and science teacher in Crofton, Maryland, and she's the creator behind Pocketful of Primary, where she creates digital resources for teachers and shares her life as a teacher through weekly classroom vlogs on YouTube. Now, check this out. She is not only a 4th grade teacher in her 5th year of teaching, but she's an eCoach for her school. She coaches both the Girls on the Run and Hero Boys After School programs, which is like a running program. And she's also earning her master's degree in teaching and learning from Capella University and is expected to graduate in the summer of 2019. AKA, she just completely works her butt off, and she's one of the most impressive people I've ever met in my entire life. You're going to love this interview. So without further ado, let's get to it. Enjoy the interview with Michelle Ferré. Today on the podcast, we have Michelle Ferré. How are you doing today?
I am tired because it's a Monday, but I am doing well.
Yes. So you do a lot of things. So one of the biggest things that I saw is you have your own YouTube channel, which has a crazy following from what I was seeing. And I watched one of your last video. It was fantastic. Great job. But I guess my biggest question, right off the bat, it's not going to be one that I normally start off with, but there's only 24 hours in a day. How do you do all of that?
Yeah, I get that question. It helps that I have always been the type of person who loves going above and beyond, and I feel best when I'm being productive. I wish I could be that person to sit on the couch and binge watch Netflix, but that has never been me. I'm definitely a workaholic. I love working, and I love working on things that I'm passionate about. So between teaching, doing my YouTube channel, I'm also getting my master's degree currently, and gosh, I coach a couple teams and all that good stuff. But for me, those are all things that I love. Now, I've always been fairly good at scheduling my time, and it helps that I don't have a lot of friends outside of teaching. I know that sounds pathetic, but it's true. So a lot of times, my nights are dedicated to my life as a teacher. My weekends are dedicated to my YouTube channel and grad school. And then I try to squeeze it, some other things in between, but I definitely am working a lot. But like I said, when I'm passionate about it, it's fun for me.
Right. Wow. Well, first of all, that's unbelievably impressive. And then second of all, I kind of just jumped into that. So tell us a little bit. So you have this YouTube channel. It's called Pocketful of Primary. Yes. And then you're also a 4th grade. I guess what is your favorite about that whole experience?
My YouTube channel kind of started on accident, in a way. I mean, I didn't accidentally hit create a YouTube channel, but what it has evolved to be kind of happened on accident. Originally, when I started it, it was truly just a way for me to get out my thoughts, because I had started blogging, but quickly realized that was just not my jam. I am not the type of person to write out my thoughts. I was much better at explaining them through video. And I had actually had a YouTube channel in college, and it was fitness based. So once I had gone down the avenue of blogging when it came to teaching, I was like, okay, this is not for me. I immediately went back to YouTube because that had kind of become my comfort when I was in college, and that was something I loved to do. So I decided to make one for teaching. And originally, like I said, it was just to get my ideas out. And then I ended up vlogging, where I basically record my life as a teacher Monday through Friday and then compile it all into one video. And that happened on accident because that was never my plan. I never thought that I was going to have a life interesting enough to actually vlog about it. But I had viewers suggesting like, hey, try vlogging. So I was like, okay, fine. Like I'll give it a shot for a week and see what I think. And as soon as I did and was able to watch the footage back and basically relive that week of my life, I fell in love with it because I realized that I was able to reflect on my life as a teacher. I was able to reflect on my lessons. I was able to see what went well, what didn't do well, what I needed to improve on. And then I started to be able to make connections between what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. And as a teacher, obviously it's kind of like a roller coaster. You constantly go back and forth between being up and down, up and down. And I was able to start to see what was causing those feelings. And I felt like that then made me a better teacher. So I would say my favorite part is just being able to reflect. And then I basically have this virtual diary of the past like year and a half of my life in the classroom, which not a lot of teachers have. And so for me, that's something special that I can always.
First of all, that's a answer. Wow. My goodness. Really well. My goodness. That's just such a good idea. They're so professionally done. Like, do you edit the videos yourself?
So I do up until very recently. And that kind of goes back to the whole, how do you do it all? You don't. You can never do everything. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So I edited my video for the 2 years and about 2 months of my and I loved the act of editing. I've always been fairly decent at it because, like I said, I had prior experience from when I was in college, and I had always just enjoyed cinematography and kind of seeing how other people did their videos and then applying that to mine. And basically at the start of this school year, me starting my master's degree, I quickly realized there was no possible way for me to spend 5 hours a week editing and then also be spending another like 10 hours a week on grad school and then be working, 40 hours a week and then coaching. Like it was not mathematically possible. So I actually hired a editor for my channel in August. I want to say it was like the beginning of this. I hired him through like a website. We've never met. We just communicate through like texting, which is kind of weird, but it worked out so well because he had watched some of my videos and he knew me and my style.
Oh, wow.
He started editing it. It was like exactly what I was doing, but like elevated a little bit because he does it professionally. And best decision I ever made because it has allowed me to focus on other things such as continuing my education that I would not have otherwise been able to.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk to you about this for days. But with that said, it is a podcast to help teachers start their week on the highest note possible. The next question I want to ask, first, it kind of goes with the do you have any rituals to start your?
So for me, it starts before Monday. It really starts on the weekend because obviously your weekend is your opportunity to recharge. And one thing that I've discovered throughout the beginning of my teaching career is that you have to fill your own cup before you fill someone else's. So if you are constantly pouring from your own cup to give to other people, there's nothing left for yourself. So before you can give to other people, you have to make sure you are taking time for yourself first. And for me, that is my Sundays. I wish I could say it's all of my Sundays, but right now it's just a part of my Sundays, and that's okay. I like to feel a combination of being prepared, but then also relaxing, because if I'm not prepared, I can't relax. So I kind of have to prepare first, and then I'm able to relax. I always start my Sunday by working out. I work out about 6 days a week. That is a huge stress reliever for me. It's something I'm passionate about. So that is a must. I sleep in, I go work out. I forgot to mention sleeping in. That is a huge thing for me. I do so much throughout the week that on the weekends I just like crash, and I definitely sleep in, don't set alarms. I go work out, and then I get my planning. So I will spend a few hours kind of preparing for the week. Sometimes I'm finishing grad school assignments, just depending on what I got done on Saturday and kind of how intensive those assignments are. But I get that done earlier in the day so that then I have my night to relax. So I love to light candles. I love to read books. I love to figure out my to-do list for the week, because that's something else that takes the stress off of me. If I have it in writing, what I'm going to accomplish every day of the week, I feel that much better and that much more prepared for the week. I always love to pack my lunch on Sunday night so I don't have to do it Monday mornings. I will figure out what I'm wearing so I'm not rushing down to the dryer on Monday mornings trying to figure out what I'm going to wear and what's clean. And then I strategically schedule my off days for the gym. So I mentioned I go to the gym 6 days a week. So that leaves one day where I don't work out, and I strategically plan that for Mondays, because Mondays I'm usually pretty tired as I'm feeling right now. And it just takes off a lot of to be able to not have to go to the gym on Mondays. So for me, it really starts on Sundays, and then that makes my Monday go that much better. And I'm realizing as I'm saying this, it's not even Monday, it's Tuesday.
Yeah, it is. I was gonna say that earlier, but I was like, I don't know, maybe she's trying.
Just let it go.
Maybe she's trying to make it sound like it's a live show.
No, that's how Mondays start the teacher brain, and then it only gets worse from Mondays through the rest of the week. So Tuesday is that much more tiring than Monday.
That's awesome, though. Wow, my good, but that's so respectable. Something that you said that kind of struck my mind is like you like to take a couple of days just to go through it. In college, when I was in, I don't necessarily. This probably wasn't the best thing for me as a student. I made good grades. I would take Friday night off and all of Saturday, no matter what. Like, even if I had a 15-page paper due. So I would there was so many Sundays when I was like cramming work in, but it was just one of those things where like, if I commit to that and just work on getting everything, done in other times during the week, then I'm committing to myself. And that's extremely important, especially with like, I feel like we're go, 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 go. We really want to help people. And be charged up, and people be charged up. And you can't really do that if you don't take some time. I mean, every once in a while. So that's really.
Yeah. And I feel like you mentioned, you have to figure out what works for you, because I know some people who love to like stay after school on a Friday, get it all done and not touch it over the weekend. Other people like to be able to do it during the weekend. Personally, I wish I could be that person to plan like a week ahead. That has, well, I'm not going to say never. I was that person for a little bit and then that quickly disappeared. But where I am teaching fourth grade and being departmentalized, and I have two different groups of students. So I have an above level group of students who are gifted and talented, and then an on level group of students. I cannot plan an entire week. I have to plan like 1 or 2 days at a time, because I really have to gauge how my students are performing to be able to figure out where I'm going to go next with them. Right. So I don't plan my whole next, when I plan on Sunday, it's usually like, okay, Monday and Tuesday, and that's about it. But I've kind of gotten into the habit of Friday nights, I go to the gym after school, I go home, I relax. Saturday is where I grind with grad school and with getting social media posts, possibly creating products for like TPT. And then Sunday is like, okay, I'm going to plan a little bit, and then I'm going to relax and take time for.
That's super organized, super professional. And it's your own way, which is even better. So that kind of leads into my next question that I want to ask here, though, really nicely. What is something that you are doing right now? We kind of have already talked about at least one thing, but what is something that you are doing right now that other teachers could possibly?
Honestly, I don't think there's any one thing that I specifically do that no one else does. I would love to think that there's something I do that I'm that unique that no one else does it, but realistically, that's probably not the case. I'm sure there are other teachers that do what I'm doing. Obviously, my YouTube channel is a little bit of a differentiator. There aren't a lot of teachers that have them, but probably more than you even think. There are a fair amount of teachers on not only social media, like Instagram is with teachers, like teacher Instagram community is huge, which is fantastic. YouTube is a much smaller group, but there's still a fair amount of teachers. I would say the things that kind of define me as a teacher, it's not YouTube, because anyone can camera and film YouTube videos about teaching. I mean, that doesn't differentiate me. It's more so like who I am as a teacher. So a couple of things that kind of come to mind that personally I feel like just define me. I greet my students at the door every single morning when they come in my classroom. And I think that's something that a lot of teachers may not consider, because then if I'm standing at my doorway, my students are all in the classroom and like, yeah, I kind of have an eye on them, but I'm not like present in the classroom. And I think that scares a lot of teachers. But when I made the transition from being in my classroom, kind of piddling around, doing little tasks, maybe writing my objectives on the board, when I transitioned from that to being in my doorway to greet my students as soon as they come in the doorway, or even before they come in the doorway as they're going to their lockers, oh my goodness. I mean, in terms of my relationships with my students, it was revolutionary. And now that is my favorite part of the day. I'm not worrying about the lesson plan I have to get done. I'm not worrying about the papers that I have to grade. I am worrying about my students. I'm worrying about giving them a hug, giving them a high five, letting them know that I'm happy they are in my classroom. I'm happy they came to school today. I'm happy to see them. And that truly gives me so much energy to take me through the day. And that's something that I personally think more teachers should do. I think a lot of teachers do it, but I think there's a lot that still kind of have to jump on that bandwagon. And I just say, try it. And I promise you will fall in love with it. Another thing for me is focusing on believe it or not, because I seem like a really positive person now, I was not always a positive person.
Mm-hmm.
When I was back in high school, I was actually a huge negative Nancy. Like I was just constantly negative, and I quickly realized like no one wants to be around that. Like that's just not fun. And yeah, there was the whole like teenage angst in high school, and that was one thing, but I just realized that that was not the person I wanted to be in my life. So I personally made a choice, and I do believe that positivity is a choice that you have to make and you have to continue to make every single day. I made that choice to be positive for me because it's something that makes me feel happier, and I know it makes the people around me feel happier, and it makes my students feel happier. And as a teacher, sometimes that can be really difficult if we're being honest, because as much as we would love for teaching to be rainbows and unicorns, that's not the reality of it. There's a lot of tough stuff that comes with teaching. My first year of teaching was really hard, and I was like crying every night. I mean, I was miserable. So I quickly realized that I was not going to be able to keep going on like that the rest of my teaching career, because I was going to end up quitting because I was so unhappy.
Right.
So I made the choice to really focus on those positives. And if you look for them, you can find them every single day in your classroom. And for me, I would say 99% of the time, those positives come from my students. The little things that they do, the way that they react towards me, the way that they laugh at me or roll their eyes because they think I'm not funny. I love those moments. And so every single day, I love to find something positive that made me smile, that brought a smile to my face, that gave me energy. And if there's something physical, like if it was a note or a picture or whatever, I actually have a box that I keep in my classroom. I put all that stuff in there, and I have that going back to my first year of teaching. And then if I'm having a bad day, I go in there, I pull out, a note from a kid that I taught 4 years ago, and I feel instantly better. And it reminds me of my why I do what I do. And ultimately it comes down to my students one other thing that I do that I don't think a lot of teachers do is I stand on tables and chairs when I'm teaching.
I love it.
Partially because I'm short, and like, honestly, that's how it started. Like I'm 5'3". I'm not the tallest person in the world. So I started elevating myself on table and chairs because I swear there is no better engagement from students than standing on a table. You instantly have every single eye in that room on you because they're like, what the heck is this crazy lady doing? So that kind of just became my thing. And that's definitely not something that is unique. Ron Clark Academy, they stand on tables and desks all the time. And that's definitely where my inspiration came. And once I tried it for myself, I was like, yes, like this is me. This is what I want to be as a teacher because it engages my students. They think I'm crazy, which I'm totally fine with. And it gives me energy. And then in return, I'm able to give that to my students.
That is flipping awesome. Oh my God. I want to touch on just something that you said about if you're looking for the positives, they're actually there. This is something I talk about with my soccer boys, and in sports psychology. It's as a coach. What do you coach?
So I'm a coach for our school's Girls on the Run team. So it's a group of 3rd to 5th grade girls, and they train for a 5K over the course of 8 weeks. I also coach Hero Boys, which is almost like the boys version. So Hero stands for honor, endure, respect, and overcome. So they also train for a 5K, and we kind of talk about those values and what it means in your life.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. Well, so, I mean, especially with running, like it's a big sports psychology. In sports psychology, we talk about so easy because I'm a soccer coach, if you go down a goal or you go down 2 goals, everybody on the team, their head starts, like if you watch it, normal teams, their heads will go down. Just boom. But a championship team is going to look at that situation and react properly. And the end of the game hasn't happened yet. Like it's not. And it's interesting because you can train your mind to see those positives. So like you said, you went in and you weren't always like that. But you keep going, Honestly, one of the most energetic people I've ever had on the podcast. I mean, this is fantastic. There is something to be just for training your brain just to see those positives, and it just makes you a lot happier. Just when you look at things from a positive perspective, you just feel good about it. It could be the worst day ever, but if you find the 2 good things that happen, the 1 good thing that happened, it just makes it a little, which is we are going to take a real quick break. Thank a sponsor. We'll be right back. For you, the listeners of the Teacher Recharge podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Whenever I have a guest on the show, I have them recommend a book that is on Audible right now. So, Michelle, what is your recommendation?
I highly recommend the book, The Essential 55 by Ron Clark. He is one of the founders of the Ron Clark Academy in Georgia. And the book essentially goes through 55 things that he kind of instills in his students. And it's little things like making eye contact with each other. And once I read that book and started implementing those things in my classroom, absolutely fell in love with it, noticed a huge difference with my students. So if you have not read that, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Well, if you would like your free audiobook copy of The Essential 55 or any of the other 180,000 titles that they have to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player, you can just go to audibletrial.com/teacher recharge. Once again, that is audibletrial.com/teacher recharge. We are back with Michelle Ferré, and it is time for my favorite part of the entire podcast and quite possibly my favorite time of the week. It is story time. So this is the part of the podcast, if this is the first time you've ever listened to us, this is the part of the podcast where I just let the guests give me their best story. So Michelle, what's your best story?
I'm going to give you my funniest story or the funniest thing I think that's happened to me in my career. One of those things that college does not prepare you for. Let's see. Go back to my third year of teaching. I was actually teaching second grade at the time. That's where Pocketful of Primary came from. I used to teach primary. So I was having some issues with my students calling out. So when I would bring them to the carpet to do a whole group lesson, they were just blurting all over the place and it was driving me bonkers. So I implemented a classroom management strategy that I called blurt beans. I would give my students a bean, and yes, it was a real bean. And in hindsight, they were small beans, and I probably should have gotten larger ones. So you can probably already see where this is going to go. But I would hand them a bean. It was their responsibility to hold on to it while we were on the carpet. If by the end of that mini lesson, they still had their bean, they got to add it to a jar. And once they got to a certain spot in the jar, they would get a reward, like extra recess. And if they blurted or called out at any point on the carpet, they had to give me their bean. So it was working pretty well. But at the same time, the beans were tiny, and I probably should have seen possible things that could transpire with second graders. So one day I'm sitting there and kids are all up on the carpet. I'm reading a book to them. And all of a sudden I hear, it's stuck. And I don't even have to ask. Like, I know what's stuck. I know the bean is stuck. It's a matter of now, where is it stuck? So I turned to the student, and he actually was sitting on a chair, like right next to me. And I'm like, the bean? He's like, yep. I'm like, okay, where is the bean stuck? And he says, because I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, there's a couple different places I could see this getting stuck. He said it was stuck in his ear. Now, my next question is, why was the bean in your ear? And he says, well, I was doing a magic trick. And I'm like, okay, obviously your magic trick was not very successful. But second of all, totally a reasonable thing that a second grader would do when they're given a bean to hold on to for an extended period of time. Okay, got it. Bean is stuck in ear. So then I'm thinking, okay, he says it's stuck, but like, I'm going to be able to pop this thing out of his ear in like 2 seconds flat. So I'm like, okay, come here. Because at this point, as a teacher, gross things are no longer gross. Like, I've dealt with much worse, so I'm like, okay, I'll dig in this kid's ear. No big deal. Comes over. I start trying to get the bean out of his ear. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid's going to go home with this bean still in his ear, because I could not get it out. And I was surprised because like I have fairly decent small fingers and like I have nails, and I was trying to use that. This bean was not budging. So I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to explain this to his parent? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to send him to the nurse. Like, let's see if she's got any tricks up her sleeve and she can get this bean out. So then I start thinking, how do I even word this on the nurse slip? Like, bean stuck in ear, don't ask. So I write it on there, briefly try to explain. And I was just like, call me if you have any questions. Sent him down to the nurse. Probably about 15 minutes went by. He comes back holding a plastic baggie with his bean in it. She was able to get it out. Hallelujah. And I was just like, okay, like dodge that bullet. But then I'm like, I'm going to have to write an email to this kid's parent, because there's no way like I'm having him go home and try to tell the story. Like, I need to set the facts straight. So I emailed her. Thankfully, I had a really good relationship with his mom. Like, she would come in my room and volunteer, and like, I loved her. So I'm like, look, please don't think any less of me as your kid's teacher, but here's what happened today. I explained it to her. I just remember her responding. She was like, yep, that's my kid. Like, totally understand. But she ended up finding this song on YouTube, and it's called Beans in My Ears or something like that. And I just remember her sending me that link at like 10 o'clock at night, and I was cracking up. And the rest of the year, whenever I would see that kid, I would sing that song to him.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Also, if you don't think I'm going to put a link to that song in the description, you have another thing coming. It is going to be there. Oh my gosh, I love it. And it's a great idea. I will say the bean idea is a great idea. And
the execution needed work.
Who would have thought though? That's crazy. That's honestly, I'm just going to be honest. That sounds exactly like something I would do, trying to impress someone. Oh, look, I can make it disappear.
Right. I think that's what he was going for. And it's one of those things, like I said, college in no way could ever prepare you for that. But at the same time, totally should have seen that coming. Like, I should have known that being was going to end up in someone's body part and it was going to end up stuck. Like,
at least, hey, when he said, hey, it's stuck, at least he was saying it. He wasn't choking on it. It could have been.
Yeah, exactly.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yes.
Instead, you got a great story out of it. That's what's up. Awesome. Well, we are about out of time here. So if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to see some of your work, where can they find you at?
So in terms of me being most present, I post on Instagram basically every day. So my Instagram is Pocketful of Primary. It's all one word, but Pocketful only has one L. So POCKETFULOF This is why I teach math and not reading. But on Instagram, it's Pocketful of Primary. I post on there most frequently, and I post stories and all that good stuff. YouTube is also Pocketful of Primary, but it has spaces. So Pocketful space of space primary. I post weekly blogs. They go up every Sunday, and it just kind of documents my life as a teacher. And I do have a Facebook as well. It's also under Pocketful of Primary, but I basically just post on there as like, hey, I have a new video. So best place to find me would either be Instagram or YouTube. And then you can always reach out to me through email at pocketfulofprimary@gmail.com.
Sweet. Well, we will put links to all of those on the description. It has been a wonderful interview. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And so do the listeners. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. This was fun.
If you or someone you know would be great for this podcast, we'd love to hear about it. So email us at teacherrechargepodcast@gmail.com. We'd also like to hear your tips, your questions, your comments, anything you'd like to see discussed on the show. We would love to hear from you. I mean, heck, even if you just want to say hi, that would be fantastic. teacherrechargepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find out more about what I speak about, the love and success approach to leadership, by visiting my website at fredmotivates.com. Once again, that is fredmotivates.com. I would love to serve you and your school. Well, hey, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Go out and be bold.